The assembly will now come to order. The chief clerk will call the roll.
Assemblywoman Anderson, Assemblywoman Backus, Assemblywoman Bilbra Axelrod, Assemblywoman Brown May, Assemblyman Carter, Assemblywoman Cohen, Assemblywoman Considine, Assemblyman DeLong, Assemblywoman Dickman, Assemblyman De Silva, Assemblywoman Duran, Assemblywoman Gallant, Assemblywoman Gonzalez, Assemblywoman Gorlow, Assemblyman Gray, Assemblyman Gurr, Assemblyman Hathen, Assemblywoman Hanson, Assemblywoman Hardy, Assemblyman Hibbets, Assemblywoman Howdigi, Assemblywoman Kasama, Assemblyman Koenig, Assemblywoman LaRue Hatch, Assemblywoman Marzola, Assemblyman MacArthur, Assemblywoman Brittany Miller, Assemblyman C.H. Miller, Assemblywoman Monroe Moreno, Assemblywoman Mosca, Assemblywoman Newby, Assemblyman Nguyen, Assemblyman O'Neill, Assemblyman Orentlicker, Assemblywoman Peters, Assemblywoman Summers Armstrong, Assemblywoman Taylor, Assemblywoman Thomas, Assemblywoman Torres, Assemblyman Watts, Assemblyman Yurick, Speaker Yeager.
Here. Assemblywoman Howdigi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. May the record reflect we have 42 members present.
The record shall so reflect. We have 42 members present. That means we do have a quorum. Would members of the assembly and guests please rise? This afternoon we have the prayer by President Rajan Zed, Universal Society of Hinduism, Reno.
I request to you, as I don't say Amen, I say Om. When I end the prayer with Om, if you can say Om with me, please, I will be thankful. Thank you. Om Bhur Svah Tat Savitr Varenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Diyo Yo Na Prachodayat. We meditate on the transcendental glory of the Deity Supreme, who is inside the heart of the earth, inside the life of the sky, and inside the soul of the heaven. May He stimulate and illuminate our minds. Samniva Akuti, Samna Hridyaniva, Samnamastu Vomano, Yathava Susahasti. United your resolve, united your hearts, may your spirits be at one, that you may long together dwell in unity and concord. Niyatam Kuru Karma, Tvam Karma, Jyao Hya Karmana, Srira Yatra Pi, Chatena Prasiddhiyat Karmana, Jagnarthat, Karmanao Nyatra Lokoyam, Karma Bandana, Tadartham Karma Kontaya, Mukta Samachara. Fulfill all your duties. Action is better than inaction. Even to maintain your body, you are obliged to act. Selfish action imprisons the world. Act selflessly without any thought of personal profit. Yate Tanur Vachi Pratishtha, Ya Srotre, Ya Cha Kak Susi, Ya Cha Manasi Santata Sivam Tam Kuru Motkrami. Be kind to us with your invisible form, which dwells in the voice, the eye, and the ear, and pervades the mind. Abandon us not. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. Om. Thank you.
Please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Order Business 2, reading and approval of the journal.
Carson City, Monday, April
Assemblywoman
24.
Howdigi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to dispense with the reading of the journal and allow the Speaker and Chief Clerk to make any necessary corrections and additions.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. Motion carries. We'll go to Order of Business 7, messages from the Senate.
Senate Chamber, Carson City, April 24, 2023. To the Honorable the Assembly, I have the honor to inform your honorable body that the Senate on this day passed Senate Bills 443, and I have the honor to inform your honorable body that the Senate on this day passed as amended Senate Bills 14, 17, 104, 184, 192, 302, 330, 362, 388, 411, and I have the honor to inform your honorable body that the Senate on this day passed as amended Senate Bills 23, 211, 261. Sherry Rodriguez, Assistant Secretary of the Senate.
Order of Business 8, motions, resolutions, and notices.
Notice of exemption, April 24, 2023. The Fiscal Analysis Division, pursuant to Joint Standing Rule 14.6, has determined the eligibility for exemption of Senate Bills numbers 163, 290, 419, 439, 195, 205, 282, 307, 390, 438, 281, 327, 400, 367, and 226. Wayne Thorley, Fiscal Analysis Division.
Assemblywoman Howdigee.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to dispense with reprints of any bills for this legislative day.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. Motion carries. The amendment is adopted. Assemblywoman Monroe Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Order of Business 8.
Order of Business 8.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the following assembly bills currently on general file be taken from their place on general file and re-referred to your committee on Ways and Means. Those bills are AB 41, 42, 117, 148, 150, 153, 155, 160, 168, 179, 226, 232, 245, 246, 281, 296, 312, 323, and 322, and 332, 348, 383, 386, 416, 422, 428, 429, 430, 434, 441, and 449.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. Motion carries. And we'll stand at ease for just a moment while we get the General File Board updated. We are still under Order of Business 8. Assemblywoman Monroe Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. One more bill. I'd like to move that Assembly Bill 85 be taken from its place on general file and re-referred to your Committee on Ways and Means.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. Motion carries. Now we will stand at ease for just a moment while we get our general file updated. We are still under Order of Business 8. Assemblywoman Howdigy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to take Assembly Bill 182 and Assembly Bill 364 from their place on general file and place them at the bottom of general file.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. Motion carries. Assemblywoman Howdigy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to take Assembly Bill 330 from its place on general file and move it to the top of general file.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. Motion carries. Assemblywoman Howdigy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to take Assembly Bill 285 from its place on general file and place at the top of general file.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. Motion carries. Assemblywoman Howdigy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to take Assembly Bills 340 and 456 from their place on general file and place them at the top of general file for the purpose of amendment.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. Motion carries. Assemblywoman Howdigy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to take Assembly Bill 188 from the Chief Clerk's desk and place it on general file.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. Motion carries. We will now go to Order of Business 9, Introduction, First Reading, and Reference of Bills.
Senate Bill 4, introduced by the Senate Committee on Health and Human Services and Equity to Public Health, revising provisions governing the use of certain proceeds of litigation against manufacturers of tobacco products to pay for prescription drugs, pharmaceutical services, and other benefits, and providing other matters properly in thereto. Senate Bill 14, introduced by the Senate Committee on Judiciary and Equity to Gaming, authorizing the chair of the Nevada Gaming Control Board to administratively approve certain persons to temporarily engage in certain gaming activities or receive proceeds therefrom without procuring a state gaming license, revising the definition of gaming employee, revising provisions relating to delinquent debt owed to the board that is determined to be impossible or impracticable to collect, revising provisions concerning the general powers and duties of the board and the Nevada Gaming Commission, expanding the activities that are included in the operation of a race book or sports pool, authorizing persons aggrieved by final decisions or orders of the commission relating to disciplinary matters to obtain a judicial review of a decision or order in the district court in and for Carson City, providing that any person authorized to receive a share of the revenue from a slot machine operated on the premises of a gaming licensee is liable for his or her proportionate share of the license fee for these slot machines, including additional fees for which prepayment credit may be granted. With regard to continuing operations, authorizing the Commission to adopt certain regulations defining the scope and power and authority of the Board and Commission relating to interactive gaming service providers and service providers, exempting persons who accept employment or an independent contract with the Commission as a commissioner appointed by the Governor from certain provisions of law governing the employment of retired public employees, and providing other matters properly thereto. Senate Bill 17, introduced by the Committee on Government Affairs and Act relating to regional transportation commissions, revising provisions relating to advisory committees established by regional transportation commissions in certain counties, revising provisions relating to the administration of the Nevada Yellow Dot program, expanding the transportation projects for which regional transportation commissions in certain counties may provide grants of money, and providing other matters properly in thereto. Senate Bill 23, introduced by the Senate Committee on Government Affairs and Act relating to redevelopment, authorizing certain legislative bodies to amend a redevelopment plan to remove an area from a redevelopment area under certain circumstances, and providing other matters properly in thereto. Senate Bill 43, introduced by the Senate Committee on Health and Human Services and Act relating to Aging and Disability Services, revising the qualifications of members of the Nevada Commission on Aging, requiring certain updates to the strategic plan for persons with disabilities as the Aging and Disability Services Division of the Department of Health and Human Services determines to be necessary, revising the duties of the Nevada Commission on Services for persons with disabilities, revising certain titles, revising a certain plan for the provision of services to persons who are deaf, hard of hearing, or speech impaired, and providing other matters properly in thereto. Senate Bill 104, introduced by the Senate Committee on Growth and Infrastructure and Act relating to vehicles, revising provisions relating to certain traffic and related violations, revising provisions provisions relating to the suspension of the driver's license of a person and providing other matters properly laid thereto. Senate Bill 184, introduced by Senator Spearman et al., an act relating to the charter of the City of North Las Vegas, increasing the number of wards in the City of North Las Vegas, increasing the number of council members of the City Council of the City of North Las Vegas, requiring the city manager to conduct an annual diversity study and establish a supplier diversity program, setting forth residency requirements for the city manager, revising the powers and duties of the city attorney, requiring certain reports to the legislature, and providing other matters properly laid thereto. Senate Bill 192, introduced by Senate Committee on Health and Human Services and Oakland County Hospitals, revising provisions governing meetings of a Board of Hospital Trustees, revising certain provisions related to a hospital advisory board, authorizing a Board of Hospital Trustees or hospital governing board to employ dentists, and providing other matters properly laid thereto. Senate Bill 211, introduced by Senators Harris et al., an act relating to marriage, requiring under certain circumstances a county clerk or county recorder to issue an amended certificate of marriage to a party to a marriage whose name has changed, limiting the authority for an applicant for a marriage license to change his or her middle name or last name at the time of issuance of a marriage license, and providing other matters properly laid thereto. Senate Bill 261, introduced by Senator Neal, an act relating to local governments, revising the definition of the terms business and local government for purposes of provisions relating to the adoption of rules by local governments that affect businesses, revising the notice requirements relating to the adoption of such rules, requiring the governing body of a local government to hold a workshop before the adoption of such rules in certain circumstances, revising the requirements for a business impact statement, revising provisions relating to when an action of the governing body of a local government to adopt rules that affect local governments is void, and providing other matters properly laid thereto. Senate Bill 302, introduced by Senators Orenshaw et al., an act relating to healthcare, prohibiting healthcare licensing boards from taking certain action against the provider of healthcare or certain other persons for providing or assisting in the provision of gender-affirming healthcare services, prohibiting the governor from surrendering or issuing an arrest warrant for a person who is charged in another state with a criminal violation related to gender-affirming healthcare services, prohibiting state agencies, local governments, and members of the judiciary from assisting in certain investigations and proceedings initiated in other states related to gender-affirming healthcare services, requiring certain healthcare licensing boards to examine the feasibility of reciprocal licensure for healthcare providers who provide gender-affirming healthcare services in other states, and providing other matters properly in there too. Senate Bill 330, introduced by Senator Lang, an act relating to healthcare, revising requirements for certain health insurance plans to provide certain benefits for preventative health care relating to breast cancer, and providing other matters properly laid thereto. Senate Bill 362, introduced by Senators Neal and Flores, an act relating to public safety, requiring a peace officer to ensure that medical aid is rendered to a person who indicates that he or she cannot breathe, requiring each law enforcement agency to adopt certain policies and procedures governing the performance by peace officers of works protected by copyright in certain circumstances, revising provisions governing the establishment of a program for the imprinting of a symbol indicating a medical condition on a driver's license or identification card, and providing other matters properly laid there too. Senate Bill 388, introduced by Senator Scheibel, an act relating to public employees, authorizing certain collective bargaining agreements entered into by the Executive Department of the state government to contain certain provisions relating to the payment of contributions to the public employees retirement system, and providing other matters properly laid there too. Senate Bill 411, introduced by Senator Orenshaw, an act relating to persons with disabilities, authorizing the juvenile court to establish an appropriate program for the treatment of children diagnosed with or suspected to have autism spectrum disorders, revising provisions relating to the membership of the Nevada Commission on Autism Spectrum Disorders, and providing other matters properly laid there too.
Assemblywoman Howdiggy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the Senate bills read and introduced from the Senate bills introduction list dated April 25th, 2023 be referred to the committees as indicated on the list. All members have a copy of that list on their desk.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. Motion carries.
One minute recess, Mr. Speaker.
1 minute recess. The Assembly will come back to order. We'll go next to Order Business 12, General File and Third Reading.
Assembly Bill 340, introduced by Assemblyman Summers Armstrong et al., an act relating to property, revising provisions relating to summary evictions, and providing other matters properly thereto. The people of the state of Nevada represented in Senate and Assembly do enact as follows: Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 22, end of Section 22, end of bill.
Are there any amendments to Section 1 or the bill as a whole?
I have Amendment 522, proposed by Assemblywoman Summers Armstrong.
Assemblywoman Summers Armstrong.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Order of Business 15.
Assemblywoman, if you would like to move to adopt the amendment, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to adopt the Amendment 522 to Assembly Bill 340.
Assemblywoman Summers Armstrong has moved for the adoption of Amendment Number 522 to Assembly Bill 340. Remarks?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Amendment 522 to Assembly Bill 340 provides that if a landlord does not file with the court proof of service of an affidavit, summons, and notice within 30 days after the affidavit of complaint for summary eviction is filed, the court is required to dismiss the action for summary eviction.
Are there any further remarks? Seeing none, all those in favor of adopting Amendment Number 522 to Assembly Bill 340 signify by saying aye. Any opposed, nay? Motion carries. The amendment is adopted. Are there further amendments to the bill?
There are none.
The bill is ordered to general file.
Assembly Bill 456, introduced by the Committee on Growth and Infrastructure, an act relating to railroads, establishing requirements for the installation and operation of wayside detector systems, requiring a stop train or other equipment to be cut, separated, or moved to clear a railroad grade crossing upon the approach of an emergency vehicle, and providing a civil penalty and providing orders properly thereto. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, do enact as follows: Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 9, end of Section 9, end of bill.
Are there any amendments to Section 1 or the bill as a whole?
I have Amendment 500, proposed by Assemblyman Carter.
Assemblyman Carter.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to adopt Amendment 500 to Assembly Bill 456.
Assemblyman Carter has moved for the adoption of Amendment Number 500 to Assembly Bill 456. Remarks?
Amendment 500 to Assembly Bill 456 does the following: prohibits the operation of work or freight trains that exceed 7,500 feet in length on certain railroad tracks in this state.
Are there any further remarks? Seeing none, all those in favor of adopting Amendment Number 500 to Assembly Bill 456 signify by saying aye. Any opposed, nay? Motion carries. The amendment is adopted. Are there further amendments to the bill?
There are none.
The bill is ordered to general file.
Assembly Bill 285, introduced by Assemblywoman Taylor et al., an act relating to education, removing certain requirements for the use of restorative discipline practices in public schools, requiring certain schools to provide a progressive discipline plan based on restorative justice to certain pupils, revising provisions governing the development of a plan of discipline by the Board of Trustees of a school district, revising provisions governing age requirements for the suspension, expulsion, and permanent expulsion of pupils, requiring the provision and reporting of a plan to provide education services to certain pupils, revising provisions governing the reporting of certain data concerning discipline of pupils, and providing other matters properly in thereto. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, do enact as follows: Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 10, end of Section 10, end of bill.
Are there any amendments to Section 1 or the bill as a whole?
There are none.
Remarks. Assemblywoman Taylor.
All right, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Is it appropriate to move for the adoption at this point?
We're just on remarks,
Just on
Assemblywoman,
remarks?
so if you could provide the remarks, and then if you have Order Business 15, we could do that.
I thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Assembly Bill 285 is intended to provide support to students while utilizing the restorative justice framework. This support happens while providing an environment that is safe, productive, safe and productive for all students, teachers, and schools, while allowing a reentry plan for any student who may be suspended or expelled. Mr. Speaker, I'll maybe go to Order of Business 15.
Order Business 15.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In doing the work with my colleagues on Assembly Bill 285, the intention is to thread the line between keeping students safe, providing support for students, while at the same time dancing that nuance, if you will, for making sure that everyone in the school environment is safe and able to learn.
Are there any further remarks? Assemblywoman Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. OB 15,
Order Business 15.
and thank you. Today I rise in strong opposition to AB 285. Along with some of my community teachers and principals, I'll read from the statements that I've received. Teachers and administrators may feel a false sense of security as they enforce rules even for minor infractions and increasingly exclude students from the classroom. But safety requires a school climate approach where students internally adopt the need for community rules and appropriate behaviors. Harsh enforcements suppress certain unacceptable behaviors, but they don't address the whole school. In the long run, social emotional learning and school climate approaches create a stable and safer school environment. Many of you have heard the famous quote by Tom Herndon from 1998. If a child doesn't know how to read, we teach. If a child doesn't know how to swim, we teach. If a child doesn't know how to multiply, we teach. If a child doesn't know how to drive, we teach. If a child doesn't know how to behave, we teach or punish. Why can't we finish the last sentence as automatically as we do the others? Similarly, if a student repeatedly misses the same math problem, do we give up on that student and kick them out of class? Instead, as educators, we provide interventions and support for that student. We provide accommodations so students can learn, thus we teach. I speak for the students of Black, Brown, and Indigenous children of the state of Nevada. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Are there further remarks? Assemblywoman Summers Armstrong.
Order of Business 15.
Order Business 15.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in opposition to AB 285. I honor and appreciate the work of my colleague from AD 27 and those in this room who have worked diligently to try and find middle ground. But I cannot overcome that we will have an opportunity to suspend children as young as 6 years old, and we have no plan, no solid plan for what we will do with those children when they are expelled from school. I like to do things in analogy. I'm not a super educated person, but I've lived a long life. We don't buy auto insurance after we've had a wreck. We buy auto insurance in preparation for the day that will come when we will need it. We cannot wait for a child to be expelled and then plan on restorative justice. We have to have a plan in place. We have to have understanding from the top of our educational system to the bottom, from the trustees to the janitor, about what we will do and how we will act and move when we have a child who has issues. That means that we have to have in place processes, support, professionals that will help that child if they get in trouble. And with all the work that was done on this bill, we still have a gap where we don't have a solution for that group of children. I am hopeful that we will consider this and know that there are thousands of children, most of them Black and brown and Indigenous and others, children of color, who will be hurt because we, the adults in the room, don't have a clear plan. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Are there further remarks? Assemblyman Orntlicker.
Thank you, Speaker. Order of Business 15.
Order of Business 15.
So I want to start by commending our colleague in Assembly District 27 for addressing a critical issue. I've heard a lot from constituents about the problem of school discipline, and I agree that we need to do something, and I commend her for all the effort she's making to find that thread the needle, as our colleague put it, to find the right balance. I also share the concerns of our colleagues in District 6 and 17. We haven't found the balance yet. This isn't the perfect bill or the bill I would like to support, but I'm going to vote for it today because I want to keep the process going. We need to do something to address it, and I want to give our colleague in Assembly District 27 the chance to find the right balance. So I will be supporting the bill today.
Thank you, Assemblyman. Are there further remarks? Assemblyman O'Neill, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today in support of AB 285. Order of Business 15, please.
Order of Business 15.
I'll try to keep this short, Mr. Speaker and fellow Assembly folks. I really want to appreciate and commend the work being done in a bipartisan way of our fellow colleagues from AB 36 and 27, excuse me. I can't read my own writing. You know, it's truly bipartisan. We have come together and worked on this bill. One of our colleagues, with her experience of years being involved with numerous children in the educational system, raising them. The other, having been responsible for an entire school district and making sure that they perform to the best levels possible. To have education, you must have organization. To have organization, we must have some kind of togetherness, and we must have an ability for the teacher to reach out to all students and not have to pay attention to just those that want attention, including negative attention. So with that, I ask my colleagues, all of you, to vote in support of AB 285 and commend this bipartisan work being done by our colleagues of District 36 and 27. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Assemblyman. Are there further remarks? Assemblywoman LaRue Hatch.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Order of Business 15.
Order of Business 15.
Thank you. I rise in support of Assembly Bill 285. As a school teacher, I have seen the crisis that is happening in our schools. It is a crisis of behavior. It is a crisis of violence, and our educators do need relief. But I want to make very clear, this crisis is much, much larger than this bill. And there are many factors that are impacting this crisis of behavior. And I think we are asking our educators to solve societal issues in our classroom. And I think that that is a problem. And so I am in support of this bill because it moves us incrementally forward. However, I would urge us to look at the very serious issues that are causing these behavior, including mental health support and class sizes with the largest class sizes in the nation. So I urge your support, but I also urge us to continue working on this issue.
Thank you, Assemblywoman. Further remarks? Assemblywoman Torres.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Order Business 15.
Order of Business 15.
Thank you. I rise in support of AB 285 today, and I want to thank my colleagues from Assembly District 27 and Assembly District 32 for your commitment to working with me on this issue. I want to say that we've probably spent well over 40 hours in meetings on just this topic alone. In 2019, I worked alongside my former colleague from Assembly District 17 so that we could pass AB 168, which created the current restorative justice laws here in the state of Nevada. At the crux, restorative justice is about holding students accountable. It's about restoration or remedies to the behavior. It's about relief to the victim, and it's about changing the behaviors of students. All of this is in this phenomenal piece of legislation. I support AB 285 because it reinforces this belief. I come from a family of educators. My mom, my siblings, my brother-in-law, myself. And we deserve to feel safe on our campuses because this safety is critical to fostering a learning environment for Nevada students, where our kids, too, feel safe. I know restorative justice works because it's a critical part of my practice every single day. After implementing the 2019 bill, it was clear that the legislation failed to address three critical components that are addressed in this piece of legislation today. One, it didn't do anything for data transparency for student discipline, especially making sure that the legislature received that data. Two, it didn't outline a plan based off of restorative approaches. It said we required one, but we didn't put the details for that plan. This phenomenal piece of legislation does just that. It determines that if the student needs additional community-based services or school services, while also creating a plan for students so that they can come back. Because when a student does leave our classroom, our ultimate goal is to get them back in this classroom. And the bill codifies the appeals process for suspensions and expulsions, which empowers Nevada students and parents. I urge your support of AB 285. Thank you.
Are there any further remarks? Seeing none, the chief clerk will open the roll. Would anyone like to change their vote? The chief clerk will record the vote. There are 38 ayes, 4 nays. The bill, having received a constitutional majority, declared it passed in order transmitted to the Senate.
Assembly Bill 330, introduced by the Committee on Education, an act relating to education requiring a suspension or expulsion in a charter school or a university school for profoundly gifted pupils to be consistent with such punishments in certain public schools, requiring a plan for restorative discipline for public schools to include consideration of certain data relating to pupil discipline, authorizing the superintendent of public instruction to require implementation of an alternative plan for restorative discipline if a public school fails to take certain actions relating to disproportionality in pupil discipline, requiring a plan for restorative discipline to reflect the authority to temporarily remove a pupil from the classroom, requiring certain actions by a school at the time of a suspension or expulsion of a pupil for committing certain acts, revising the persons to whom the appeals of certain disciplinary determinations may be made, revising requirements for the policies for the appeal of suspension and expulsions, and providing other measures appropriately thereto. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, do enact as follows: Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 16, end of Section 16, end of bill.
Are there any amendments to Section 1 or the bill as a whole?
There are none.
Remarks. Assemblywoman Bilbray Axelrod.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Assembly Bill 330 makes various changes to pupil discipline and behavior. It establishes certain conditions concerning disciplinary notifications and appeals and requires reporting and review of certain disciplinary data, including data concerning disproportionality of punishments. This bill also outlines certain provisions concerning the removal of a pupil from a classroom or school, including a provision of a plan for the restorative justice discipline of a temporarily removed pupil, it removing certain requirements concerning the return of the pupil under certain circumstances, removing the requirement that pupils be given the opportunity for a hearing prior to the suspension or expulsion under certain circumstances, and allow the pupil to be temporarily removed prior to the provision of a plan of action based on restorative justice under certain circumstances. Order of Business 15.
Order Business 15.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank everyone who worked tirelessly, and I do mean tirelessly, on this and the previous bill to get the language that we're voting on today. The conversations were open and heartfelt, and I believe these bills will help teachers and students feel safe while recognizing that different situations should have different consequences and outcomes. As both a mom and as my role as Education Chair of the Assembly Committee, I would never, ever move legislation forward that would give up on a child. Restorative justice is at its core, looks at the whole child, and when implemented properly, recognizes that social emotional learning are imperative for a child's success. I urge you to vote yes on AB 330.
Are there any further remarks? Assemblywoman Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Order of Business 15.
Order of Business 15.
Thank you. I again rise in strong opposition to Assembly Bill 330. While I understand calls for increased safety in schools, this push for increasing a punitive response to discipline procedures sends a message that adults' needs supersedes those of our children. A dynamic in which students are perceived as potential threats and or criminals, rather than young people in distress and need of wraparound services. It's taking us entirely in the wrong direction. This bill, AB 330, while further contributes to discipline disparities within our state's Black and brown indigenous student population, according to the 2021-2022 discipline data, African American students make up 12.15% of the student population, yet account for 31.66% of suspensions and 38.14% of the expulsions. Additionally, these disparities seem consistent with poverty, homelessness, health care, academic achievement, and incarceration. It is my understanding that when I come into these halls, I feel safe because the administration has made me feel safe. In my 20 years in the United States Air Force, every facility that I went to, the base commanders made me feel safe. When I worked at the Regional Justice Center in Clark County, in a courtrooms with alleged criminals, I felt safe. The administration made me feel safe. I'm asking that this body stop overreaching and let the administrators of our schools do their job. Make teachers, students feel safe. Expulsion is not the answer. We are too educated in this 21st century to accept the fact that expulsion is an answer, especially in Bill 330, where we're looking at 6-year-old students to be expelled. What do we do with them? Where do they go? Should we build more jails? Because I guarantee you in 2 years, you'll hear bills saying that we need more jails. And who will be in those jails? Black and brown and indigenous, because that's the way our nation is. And I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Assemblywoman. Are there further remarks? Assemblywoman LaRue Hatch.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Order of Business 15.
Order of Business 15.
Thank you. I rise in support of AB 330, once again, as an educator who believes that we need to find a balance and we need to have safety in our schools. But I actually want to echo the concerns of my colleague, because I think there are many schools where a principal is not making their staff feel safe. And I think that there are larger issues than this bill. And I would just like to share some information with the body. In Clark County, there is a ratio of 1,000 students for one counselor, and that is a problem for mental health. We have classes of 45 and 50, and that is a problem for behavior. And so once again, while I will be in support of this bill, I urge us to continue working on those larger problems. And I would also like to stand in solidarity with my colleague from Assembly District 17, who is fighting for her community and who has endured disingenuous and dishonest attacks as a result. And I think that is unacceptable, and I want to make that publicly clear. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there further remarks? Assemblywoman Summers Armstrong.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in opposition to AB 330. Order of Business 15.
Order of Business 15.
Earlier we heard that these bills, these last two bills we were talking about, would implement restorative justice. We had a previous piece of legislation that had an outline for restorative justice, but it was not implemented. And that is why we are here today. That bill laid out steps, requirements. The word shall was included in the language. Talked about positive behavior intervention and support, and a plan for behavioral interventions and referrals to a referral to a team of student support, and a referral to individualized educational programs and teams. The thing that was missing was implementation. I have received a letter from community organizations that are extremely concerned about these bills. And I'll just tell you a little bit about what they're saying. There are currently no alternative school placements for elementary school age children. The students who will be most impacted by these policies are students in poverty, students of color, homeless, abuse, and neglect. Thus, unless the family can afford private instruction or to homeschool their child, a student will miss out on educational instruction during the most formative years of their life. Those are the students that I represent. Students in historic West Las Vegas and near North Las Vegas, whose families and generations before them suffered from the intentional segregation of their schools, disenfranchisement, disinvestment, lack of funding. These are the children who will be affected. Students at schools near me that are predominantly Black and brown, that the school districts have not worked diligently, from my perspective, to ensure that they had the resources that they needed. These children didn't ask to be born into poverty. They did not ask to be born into homelessness. But they're here, and they're our responsibility. And if we continue to blame them and hold them responsible for pulling themselves up from bootstraps that they don't even own and don't even have the access and the ability to purchase, what are we saying to them? That they are left to their own devices to find a way when they have no ability to do so. But we do. We have the chance to do something to help these children that is effective, that is more than just get out. That is not how we are all here. We are here because someone opened a door for us and allowed us an opportunity to grow and be educated and to be in this space. And I just implore you to consider, even with all the language in these bills, that there are still things that we must consider, and that these bills do not solve the issue of discipline. That is something deeper, and if we're not going to be committed to restorative justice and in the implementation of it before we put anybody out of school, it is again going to fail. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Assemblywoman. Are there further remarks? Assemblywoman Hanson, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm not sure if I need to ask for Order Business 15.
You do.
Please. Okay, thank you.
Order Business 15.
I rise in support of Assembly Bill 330. A lot has been said. There is, of course, a lot of opinion and a lot of emotion in this body, and it goes without saying that we all care. We absolutely care, and I'm here to reassure my colleagues that I would never be a party to legislation that would throw away children. I don't think any of us would. We know that from this body, bills still need work, and they still continue to have adjustments, and I make a commitment and a promise to you that the school discipline bills that I've been involved with, and it's been an honor to be involved with those of you here, and to be involved with those who have had concerns, and we've heard those concerns, and that I will make that commitment going forward from here, that we will make sure that we do our best to ensure that Nevada's children and Nevada's teachers are protected, that staff is protected, and that administrators are allowed to do their jobs. And that's why AB 330 and AB 285 are needed, so that administrators can do their jobs and continue to give the opportunity for safety for our students and for our staff. I thank those who've been involved. I thank those who have mentioned what their opposition is, and we'll work through that. And again, I just wanted to be on the record to let you know that my heart is in this. I'll be a part of this in the interim, and hopefully we can come back here and be able to have a good report, because data will be available. That was part of this bill. It's important that we know about the disproportionality, and if it's there, how we're addressing it. We need to have full transparency, and I feel that these bills do that. So thank you, and I urge my colleagues to support AB 330.
Thank you, Assemblywoman. Are there further remarks? Assemblyman Gray.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of AB 330.
Order of Business 15.
Order of Business 15, please, sir. When we talk about improving our education system, we must address as a first priority the issue of violence in our classrooms. In the Clark County School District last year alone, police responded to nearly 6,000 violent act calls. Some of the restorative justice policies that have been in place since the 2019 legislature have prevented teachers from controlling their classroom and creating safe learning environments for their students. Let's not forget, that is their first and foremost responsibility, to provide a safe place for their number one job, education. They go hand in hand. The ethos behind these principles of restorative justice was no doubt well intended. However, the 29 legislation clearly requires some well thought out revision so that our classrooms can be safe and productive. We stand with AB 330 and commend the bipartisan work that our colleagues have done on the issue. I respectfully request all of my colleagues in this institution to vote yes on AB 330. Thank you.
Thank you, Assemblyman. Are there further remarks? Seeing none, the Chief Clerk will open the roll. Would anyone like to change their vote? The Chief Clerk will record the vote. There are 38 ayes, 4 nays. The bill, having received a constitutional majority, declared passed and ordered transmitted to the Senate.
Assembly Bill 11, introduced by the Committee on Health and Human Services, an act relating to health care, prohibiting a hospital or psychiatric hospital from employing a physician under certain circumstances, providing penalties for a violation of such prohibition, prohibiting a hospital from taking measures to restrict certain activity of a provider of health care who is employed by or serves as an independent contractor of the hospital, and providing other measures properly named thereto. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, to enact as follows: Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 10, end of Section 10, end of bill.
Are there any amendments to Section 1 or the bill as a whole?
There are none.
Remarks. Assemblywoman Peters.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Assembly Bill 11 prohibits hospitals or psychiatric hospitals from employing certain physicians for practicing medicine except where expressly authorized by law. Hospitals violating these provisions may have their license suspended or revoked and are subject to certain administrative penalties. The bill exempts hospitals or psychiatric hospitals employing physicians who are participating in specific graduate programs, medical facilities that are owned or operated by the federal or state government, a church or religious denominations. The bill further prohibits hospitals from taking measures to restrict certain activities of healthcare providers whom they employ or who serve as independent contractors, including prohibiting a contract with or taking any action against providers who discuss with others their salary, wages, or working conditions, and entering into non-competitive covenants that with providers that prohibit them from providing medical services for other medical facilities.
Are there any further remarks? Seeing none, the Chief Clerk will open the roll. Would anyone like to change their vote? The chief clerk will record the vote. There are 26 ayes, 16 nays. The bill having received a constitutional majority, declare it passed and ordered transmitted to the Senate.
Assembly Bill 34, introduced by the Committee on Natural Resources, an act relating to water, revising various public notice requirements relating to water, revising certain requirements for maps relating to water rights, and providing other matters properly relating thereto. The people stated that are represented in Senate and Assembly do enact as follows: Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 13, end of Section 13, end of bill.
Are there any amendments to Section 1 or the bill as a whole?
There are none.
Remarks. Assemblyman Gurr.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Assembly Bill 34 revised certain provisions relating to the state engineer's public notice requirements. The bill eliminates a statutory requirement that certain notices and orders be published consecutively and adds a requirement for the Division of Water Resources to post certain orders and notices on its website. Additionally, AB 34 revises the time period for individuals to file written protests against the granting of certain applications and allows that if no protest is received within a certain time frame, the state engineer may presume publication and process out the application conditionally. The state engineer may not grant the application or issue a permit until he or she files proof of proper publication. The effective date of this bill is October 1, 2023.
Are there any further remarks? Seeing none, the chief clerk will open the roll. Would anyone like to change their vote? The chief clerk will record the vote. There are 40 ayes, 2 nays. The bill having received a constitutional majority, declare it passed and ordered transmitted to the Senate.
Assembly Bill 65, introduced by the Committee on Education, an act relating to education, revising provisions relating to reports regarding and investigations into incidents of discrimination based on race, bullying, and cyberbullying, revising provisions governing the approval of work-based learning programs, revising the requirement for children of a certain age to attend a public school, revising provisions governing the placement of children in certain early grades, and providing other matters properly relating thereto. The people stated that are represented in Senate and Assembly do enact as follows: Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 16, end of Section 16, end of bill.
Are there any amendments to Section 1 or the bill as a whole?
There are none.
Remarks. Assemblywoman Bilbray Axelrod.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Assembly Bill 65 makes various changes related to education. The bill revises the definition of bullying and certain requirements for investigation and reporting certain instances of bullying, cyberbullying, and discrimination based on race. Furthermore, the bill requires the Superintendent Public Instruction of the Nevada Department of Education rather than the State Board of Education to approve work-based learning programs. Finally, the bill makes changes relating to kindergarten and starting school, including a child to be 5 years old of age before August 1st preceding a school year in order to be admitted to kindergarten, complete kindergarten, and begin attending public school at 6 rather than the current age, which is 7. Order of Business 15.
Order of Business 15.
I just wanted to mention something kind of quickly because I know that my dear colleague will be speaking in opposition, and I respect her very much. I forget, Assembly District 32. But I thought it was important that we added the language to have children start at the age of 6. It wasn't that long ago, I think 2 sessions ago, if memory serves, that you could be tried as an adult at age 8. So I think our kids deserve chances, and it's, that's what we're kind of talking about, right? Is doing right by kids and starting them early, I think, is a way that we can start with that social emotional learning and help really set kids up for success. So I urge your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Assemblywoman. Are there further remarks? Assemblywoman Hanson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Order Business 15.
Order of Business 15.
I rise in opposition to AB 65, and with all due respect to my most excellent chairman of Education, it was the amendment that took me to opposition. The amendment we have had for decades, since 1957 in NRS, that children be enrolled in school by the age of 7. To have an amendment to change decade-long policy, I believe that was really more worthy of a hearing rather than an amendment. what I would like to do is share with you that the reason I would prefer it to be done by a hearing and not just by amendment, because it changes decade-long policy, is while the vast majority of children in school are in school before the age of 7, there are circumstances where parents opt to not start their children until age 7. And there are studies to bolster some of those parents in the delay to enroll by age 7. A study out of Stanford University by researchers Thomas D. and Hans Henrik Sivertsen found kids who started later than average students. They had 73% better scores on tests of their hyperactivity and inattention 4 years later. Schools in Nordic countries aren't strangers to enrolling kids in school later in life. In Finland, for example, it isn't uncommon for kids to begin formal schooling at age 8. Much of their childhood is spent either at home or in a form of pre-kindergarten, where the biggest emphasis are on playtime and social skills. Traditional subjects don't enter the picture until later. Students in Finland and other Nordic countries are some of the top performing nations in the annual PISA education rankings. In closing, I urge my colleagues to vote no on AB 65 and would encourage a better vetting process in changing this decades-long policy from 7 to 6 by a legislative hearing where data and studies could be reviewed. While the state might have good intentions, parents know what is best for their children, and this long-standing policy has not proved to be a problem, but rather a reasonable benchmark for enrollment. I urge my colleagues no on AB 65. Thank you.
Thank you, Assemblywoman. Are there further remarks? Seeing none, the Chief Clerk will open the roll. Would anyone like to change their vote? The Chief Clerk will record the vote. There are 31 ayes, 11 nays. The bill having received a constitutional majority declared passed and ordered transmitted to the Senate.
Assembly Bill 66, introduced by the Committee on Legislative Operations and Elections, an act relating to ethics in government, making various changes relating to the provisions governing ethics in government, enacting the Nevada Legislative Ethics Law, and providing penalties and providing other measures properly thereto. The people's state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, do enact as follows: Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 111, end of Section 111, end of bill.
Are there any amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole?
There are none.
Remarks. Assemblywoman Newby.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Assembly Bill 66 makes various changes to the administrative functions and procedural operations of the Commission on Ethics, including advisory opinions, cooling off periods, and filing of ethics complaints, and also adds a new chapter of the NRS to be cited as the Nevada Legislative Ethics Law. Thank you.
Are there any further remarks? Seeing none, the Chief Clerk will open the roll. Would anyone like to change their vote? The Chief Clerk will record the vote. There are 37 ayes, 5 nays. The bill having received a constitutional majority declared passed and ordered transmitted to the Senate.
Assembly Bill 86, introduced by Assemblywoman Hardy, an act relating to animals, revising provisions relating to animal cruelty, providing penalty, and providing other measures properly thereto. The people's state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, do enact as follows: Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 2, end of Section 2, end of bill.
Are there any amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole?
There are none.
Remarks. Assemblywoman Hardy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Assembly Bill 86 prohibits a person from committing certain acts against an animal kept for working purposes or a domesticated animal that is not owned by a person. This bill also makes it unlawful to confine an animal in certain spaces and deprive an animal of necessary veterinary care or grooming or shearing. The bill prohibits a person, with exceptions for dogs engaged in certain activities, from restraining a dog with an improperly fitted collar, harness, weighted tether, chain, tie, trolley, or pulley system, and leaving a dog outside and unattended unless the dog has access to adequate shelter, as defined in the bill. Lastly, the bill repeals, revises, and replaces certain provisions relating to the abandonment of disabled animals. The effective date is July 1st, 2023.
Are there any further remarks? Seeing none, the Chief Clerk will open the roll. Would anyone like to change their vote? The chief clerk will record the vote. There are 42 ayes, 0 nays. The bill having received a constitutional majority, declare it passed and ordered transmitted to the Senate.
Assembly Bill 198, introduced by Assemblyman Art Licker, an act related to healthcare, enacting provisions governing the certification and regulation of certified registered nurse anesthetist, authorizing a certified registered nurse anesthetist to order, prescribe, possess, and administer controlled substances, poisons, dangerous drugs, and devices under certain circumstances, and providing other matters properly thereto. The people stated that are represented in Senate and Assembly to enact as follows: Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 17, end of Section 17, end of bill.
Are there any amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole?
There are none.
Remarks. Assemblyman Orntlicker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Assembly Bill 198 requires the State Board of Nursing to issue a certificate of registration as a certified registered nurse anesthetist to a registered nurse who meets the requirements of existing law and any additional requirements prescribed by the board. A certified registered nurse anesthetist may order, prescribe, and administer controlled substances, drugs, and devices to treat a person under the care of a licensed physician, dentist, or podiatric physician before, during, and after surgery or childbirth.
Are there any further remarks? Seeing none, the chief clerk will open the roll. Would anyone like to change their vote? The chief clerk will record the vote. There are 36 ayes, 6 nays. The bill having received a constitutional majority, declare it passed and ordered transmitted to the Senate.
Assembly Bill 213, introduced by Assemblywoman Howdeggy, an act related to land use planning, requiring the governing body of a city or county to publish certain information on its internet website relating to certain applications relating to land use planning, requiring the governing body of certain counties and cities to annually report certain information to the Housing Division of the Department of Business and Industry and the Advisory Committee on Housing, revising provisions relating to the procedures for review of certain applications for land use planning, revising provisions relating to the adoption of measures in certain counties relating to affordable housing, providing that certain deadlines related to land use planning that apply to counties also apply to cities, requiring counties and cities to enact certain ordinances related to projects for affordable housing on or before July 1, 2024, making certain legislative declarations and providing other matters properly in there too. The people stated that are represented in Senate and Assembly to enact as follows: Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 16, end of Section 16, end of bill.
Are there any amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole?
There are none.
Remarks. Assemblywoman Howdeggy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Assembly Bill 213 revises provisions relating to the adoption of measures in certain counties relating to affordable housing. The measure provides that certain deadlines relating to land use planning that apply to counties also apply to cities. In addition, on or before July 1st, 2024, the governing body of each county and city must enact certain ordinances relating to affordable housing projects. Governing bodies must annually submit a plan to the Housing Division, Department of Business and Industry, and the Advisory Committee on Housing, certain information relating to housing.
Are there any further remarks? Seeing none, the chief clerk will open the roll. Would anyone like to change their vote? The chief clerk will record the vote. There are 39 ayes, 3 nays. The bill having received a constitutional majority, declare it passed in order to transmitted to the Senate.
Assembly Bill 225, introduced by Assemblywoman Newby, an act relating to governmental administration, authorizing certain persons to request a court order to make certain personal information in the possession of a county recorder, county assessor, or elections official to be kept in a confidential manner, making various other changes relating to the procedures for a person to request personal information in the possession of a county recorder, county assessor, or elections official to be maintained in a confidential manner, providing penalties and providing other matters properly in there too. The people stated that are represented in Senate and Assembly to enact as follows: Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 30, end of Section 30, end of bill.
Are there any amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole?
There are none.
Remarks. Assemblywoman Newby.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Assembly Bill 225 sets forth a process for a person who is not otherwise authorized under existing law or a representative of a governmental agency for whom such a person is an employee to petition the district court to make personal information of that person that is contained in public records Yes. Confidential. Thank you. A little too fast there. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Assemblywoman. Are there further remarks? Seeing none, the Chief Clerk will open the roll. Would anyone like to change their vote? The Chief Clerk will record the vote. There were 42 ayes, 0 nays. The bill having received a constitutional majority, declare it passed and ordered transmitted to the Senate.
Assembly Bill 227, introduced by Assemblywoman Cohen, enacting to domestic relations, creating summary procedures for the resolution of certain matters relating to annulment and child custody, and providing other measures relating thereto. The people stated that are represented in Senate and Assembly do enact as follows: Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 18, end of Section 18, end of bill.
Are there any amendments to Section 1 or the bill as a whole?
There are none.
Remarks. Assemblywoman Cohen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Assembly Bill 227 creates summary procedures for an annulment and for child custody under certain circumstances. The bill provides that a marriage may be dissolved by the summary procedure for an annulment when certain factors are present and both spouses agree to the summary procedure. Additionally, an action to determine custody of a child may be brought by the summary procedure when the parents or legal guardian of a child have reached a detailed agreement on the custody, medical, or other care, education, maintenance, and support of the child, and the court determines that using the summary procedure is in the best interest of the child.
Are there any further remarks? Seeing none, the Chief Clerk will open the roll. Would anyone like to change their vote? The Chief Clerk will record the vote. There were 42 ayes, 0 nays. The bill having received a constitutional majority, declared passed and ordered transmitted to the Senate.
Assembly Bill 241, introduced by Assemblyman Mosca et al., Senators Doniate et al., enacted into education requiring pupils enrolled in a public high school to be enrolled in the courses and credits required to obtain a college and career-ready high school diploma, establishing exceptions to the requirement for the pupil to be enrolled in such courses and credits, prescribing additional requirements for obtaining a college and career-ready high school diploma, and endorsement and providing other measures relating thereto. The people stated that are represented in Senate and Assembly to enact as follows: Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 4, end of Section 4, end of bill.
Are there any amendments to Section 1 or the bill as a whole?
There are none.
Remarks. Assemblywoman Mosca.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Assembly Bill 241 requires a high school pupil to enroll in the courses and credits required by the State Board of Education to receive a college and career-ready high school diploma. The bill also outlines circumstances in which students are not required to enroll in such courses and credits and specifies certain implementation dates for the bill. Mr. Speaker, order of business 15.
Order of business 15.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Growing up as a low-income student of color, I originally was put on the regular classes track. It wasn't until a teacher said she saw something in me and put me on a different track that I was able to graduate as the first in my family to go to college, a Harvard graduate and a member of this body. This bill ensures that all young people have access to any opportunities that they choose, and I urge its passing. Thank you.
Are there any further remarks? Assemblywoman Hanson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Order of business 15.
Order of business 15.
I rise in enthusiastic support for AB 241. This is truly one of my favorite bills of the session. My colleague from Assembly District 14 was an inspiration in the hearing and in this legislative body, and her story should not have to be an exception. It should be the rule, and this bill will allow all students to have that opportunity to have a career and college-ready diploma. So thank you for hopefully getting on board with this wonderful bill.
Thank you, Assemblywoman. Are there further remarks? Seeing none, the Chief Clerk will open the roll. Would anyone like to change their vote? The Chief Clerk will record the vote. There were 42 ayes, 0 nays. The bill having received a constitutional majority, declared passed and ordered transmitted to the Senate.
Assembly Bill 250, introduced by Assemblywomen Considine and Anderson, enacting to health care, prohibiting certain actions related to pricing and reimbursement for certain drugs, creating a cause of action for violating such prohibitions, requiring certain entities to maintain a registered agent in office in the state, and providing other measures relating thereto. The people stated that are represented in Senate and Assembly do enact as follows: Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 5, end of Section 5, end of bill.
Are there any amendments to Section 1 or the bill as a whole?
There are none.
Remarks. Assemblywoman Considine.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Assembly Bill 250 prohibits a person or entity during the price applicability period that purchases a drug that is subject to a maximum fair price in this state from paying a price that is higher than the maximum fair price, or seeks reimbursement for a drug subject to the maximum fair price that is delivered, dispensed, or administered to a person in this state from seeking reimbursement at a higher rate than the maximum fair price. The measure also requires any such person or entity to maintain a registered agent and an office or base of operations in the state. This bill makes it a deceptive trade practice for any person to violate their prohibitions. Mr. Speaker, order of business 15.
Order of business 15.
Nevadans have seen a 500% increase in the cost of prescription drugs over the last 30 years, the highest cost increase in the nation. The cost of prescription drugs affects every family and every community across our state. Nevadans across the state and across the political spectrum support cutting the costs of medicine for their families. I brought this legislation forward because it's an opportunity to provide relief to Nevadans dealing with significant health issues, for Nevadans of all ages, for the grandfather and the grandson with the same life-altering health issues, for the 68-year-old suffering from breast cancer and the 22-year-old suffering with the same cancer. I urge this body to vote yes on this legislation so we can continue to lower healthcare costs for Nevadans. Thank you.
Are there any further remarks? Seeing none, the Chief Clerk will open the roll. Would anyone like to change their vote? The Chief Clerk will record the vote. There are 27 ayes, 15 nays. The bill having received a constitutional majority declared passed and ordered transmitted to the Senate.
Assembly Bill 264, introduced by Assemblyman Taylor et al., an act relating to education prohibiting a pupil in a public school from being deprived of any award that is based on perfect attendance or any eligibility or opportunity to compete for such an award because of an approved absence from school for the observance of a religious holiday, revising provisions governing the attendance of pupils in circumstances under which a pupil is deemed truant and providing other measures properly thereto. The people of the state of Nevada represented in Senate and Assembly to enact as follows. Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 9, end of Section 9, end of bill.
Are there any amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole?
There are none.
Remarks. Assemblywoman Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Assembly Bill 264 makes various changes related to school absences due to the observance of religious holidays. And in the case of such absences, a parent or legal guardian must notify the school in writing at least 3 days prior to the absence, and not more than 5 absences as a whole each school year shall be allowed. Order of Business 15, Mr. Speaker.
Order of Business 15.
Thank you very much. I brought this bill really to support those students who are celebrating their religious holidays, whether it's Ramadan or whether it's Yom Kippur. Students should not be penalized for celebrating those holidays, and this allows that to happen while putting a maximum on it and requiring the student to complete all work that they may miss while they're gone. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Are there any further remarks? Seeing none, the Chief Clerk will open the roll. Would anyone like to change their vote? The Chief Clerk will record the vote. There are 42 ayes, 0 nays. The bill having received a constitutional majority declared passed and ordered transmitted to the Senate. Assemblywoman Howdigi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Before we stand in a recess, I would like to make some quick announcements to the floor. If you are in the Education Committee, please report to your hearing room for your committee pictures. Upon the adjournment of committee pictures for education, please head to Revenue if you are on the Revenue Committee. So we will go for committee pictures education, followed by the Committee on Revenue for pictures, and we will begin floor again promptly at 4 p.m., so please be in your seats by 4 p.m. With that, I move that we stand in a recess, Mr. Speaker.
Assemblywoman Howdigi has moved that the Assembly stand in recess until 4 p.m. today. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. Motion carries. We are in recess.